Bonjour et bienvenue à la conférence d'aujourd'hui d'Olga Felip, organisée par la Commission des relations extérieures d'architecture EPIA et qui fait partie du cycle Dialogue Cinéland comme une rencontre entre l'architecture et le cinéma. Le bureau Josep Camps Olga Felip est un des bureaux qui représente l'architecture catalane d'aujourd'hui. Et nous avons profité ici à EPIA des conférences déjà de Elias Torres et de Daria de Seta, ainsi que de l'exposition de l'architecture catalane des années 50. Ce qui nous donne une idée déjà de l'intérêt de la présence de Olga Felip aujourd'hui avec nous. Josep Camps et Olga Felip font ses études à l'école de Barcelone, où ils apprennent le métier d'architecte auprès des professeurs comme Elias Torres, Carme Pigem ou Carme Pinos. Ils finalisent ses études en 2001 et 2005 et en 2006, ils fondent leur propre bureau, Architecturia. Bureau qu'ils définissent comme un lieu de production architecturale basé dans l'analyse critique entre la matière et la technique. Leur bureau compte avec un large éventail de projets, tant en urbanisme comme en espace public, des bâtiments privés et publics, ainsi que des interventions éphémères. Lauréats de divers prix, ils ont exposé leurs ouvrages et fait plusieurs conférences dans le monde entier. En même temps, ils ont été professeurs dans différentes écoles d'architecture en Europe. Tout cela à l'âge de 33 et 38 ans. Pour conclure, le titre qu'Olga Felip a choisi pour son exposé d'aujourd'hui, Vivre sa vie, à propos du film de Jean-Luc Godard et de la technique de reproductibilité selon Walter Benjamin, est tout à fait en dialogue avec le cycle de conférences que nous vous proposons entre le cinéma et l'architecture. Je voudrais ainsi remercier Olga Felip d'être avec nous. Au nom du bureau, Josep Camps, Olga Felip, architecte à Gérone. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. I'm going to talk in English. I hope it's okay. First of all, I would like to thank you so much for inviting me to Renzo and Francois. I'm so happy to have come back to Genève after a long time ago. My first time here, I was very young, so I have these very nice memories from Genève. So thank you so much. Thinking about this talk, I thought about explaining our journey so far, because we think that there is a close relation between how one approaches to the practice of architecture and the final outcome of one's work. We are two partners, Josep and I, and we both of us studied at the Barcelona School of Architecture. During those years of university, we traveled a lot, and we took part on many workshops in universities abroad. Venice, LA, Paris, Edinburgh, also London. And now we have seen that we learned a lot from these trips because each university teaches in very different ways. Every country has its own culture. Even the architect and how the profession is practiced is very different, so we get a critical view. When I finished my studies in 2005, Josep and I decided to partner together, and we moved to Girona, which is a small city 90 kilometers north from Barcelona. Girona's old quarter is amazing, and it has this very special structure of patio houses. Once a year, we celebrate the spring, opening all the patios so everybody can visit them. This event is called Temps de Flors, Flower Time. And a lot of people participate as volunteers doing urban installations. So one of our first works was one of these installations. The condition of these ephemeral interventions were, one, that you almost have no budget, cost zero, and second, that they are auto-constructed, which means that we had to build it by ourselves. From these ephemeral interventions, we learned about the potential of economy of resources. And also we learned to think about how to produce or build the object from the very first steps of the design process. So the process was the opposite than the usual. It was more about, let's see what do we have, which resources we have, and what can we do with that. I guess that somehow our hands were an amazing tool of learning. At this very beginning stage, we also took part in many competitions, as we understood that competitions were our real chance to get started as a practice. So we worked very hard on that, and then between 2006 2007, we won the first ones. So 2006, we could say that it was the starting point of the office. But it was not until 2010 that we finished our first work, the apps square, the image on the screen. And I have to say that before this moment, we didn't think so much about what we were doing. I mean, we were just doing it. Because, I mean, before we didn't have any experience, so you have to move by intuition. But once we had completed the first work, then everything changed. Because we could verify some things that we had in mind. We could see some mistakes and learn from them. But maybe the most interesting or exciting was what we call the happy accidents, what you don't expect and comes to be a small success. And then it becomes a new subject of research. There's this film by Woody Allen, Match Point, where it says, there are moments in a match when the ball hits the top of the net, and for a split second, it can either go forward or fall back. With a little luck, it goes forward and you win. Or maybe it doesn't, and then you lose. And this, I mean, in life, it happens. And it's so important that when you have one of these happy moments, happy accidents, you don't miss the opportunity. 2 years ago, Albert Serra and I went to London to teach at the AA. Albert Serra is a very well-known Spanish film director. He is the director of this film, Bird Songs. You can see this image on the screen. And he has just been awarded at the Locarno Film Festival for this film. So Albert and I were in London teaching at the AA. And one evening we were discussing about if architecture was an art or it wasn't. And he said that no, that architecture is not an art because we have a very radical restriction, which is the inhabitant. The discussion was very long and we can agree or not. But in our case, it is true that we approach to architecture as artisans, because basically we focus on our interest in two subjects, which is people, the inhabitant, and technique. When I was 18 years old, after my first year at university, I looked for a job in Paris and I went to work for 2 months there. And one evening I was coming back from the office and there was this very small cinema and they were playing this film, so I went in and that was a huge discovery for me, I think. Vivre sa vie is a film by Jean-Luc Godard from 1962. And this film made me think a lot. In this film, Godard is very radical in two issues. The first, the relation established with you, the audience, and second, a question of technique, the montage. So in other words, people and technique. Vivre sa vie is a collection of scenes and images where Jean-Luc Godard shows and makes visible the montage technique. The film is set in 12 chapters, with a sequence of scenes not assembled, but just juxtaposed, cut without transition, a collection of images that show some facts. Godard does not contextualize any fact. He just shows them without any introduction or explanation. Then, who connects all these fragments, the one that gives sense to the story is not the author, but the audience. Godard steps back. And this gives an amazing intensity between the film and you, the wire. Now, going back to the concept of technique, I would say that since we started our office during these 8 years, we have focused our interest on technique or process of project. That doesn't mean that we're not interested on language, but we don't consider it as the essential element that leads the project. What we seek is that technique and process prevail over language. Along our process of project, we give a special value to 3 subjects: collectionism, reversibility, and materiality. A collectionist is someone who takes an object away from its functional context. When an object loses its use, then it acquires a new value. When a spoon is no more used as a spoon, or when a market is not more used as a market, then all its memory, the past experiences, the stories, all its meaning gains value. Our first projects were located on sites in old quarters, or projects about recovering old buildings. So in both cases, we had to deal with heritage. Maybe that's why we have such a respect for the material forerunners, or the immaterial ones. Also, because of that, we analyzed the site in detail, looking for clues, traces, tracks, marks, urban identity. We have systemized the collect of information, the way of drawing and representation of the site, so that these very first drawings already show the first intentions and strategies of the project. We are interested in objects which have been taken from their original use. We work on these objects to provide a new point of view on them. The old market of Ferrerias fell into disuse for several years. Its physical and social surroundings changed over the years, and the building was kept there, absolutely forgotten. Now, we were asked to restore and extend it to become a new cultural center. So there was a temporal overlapping, past, present, and future, between memory and our contemporaneous life. When we work on recovering old buildings for a new use, we strip down the old building to recover its original condition. In this case, we recover the void character of the old nave, and we use the light as a principal element. Now, the natural light in the interior space emphasizes the dialogue between old and new. Between the market and the square beside, there were some annex buildings for storage, and so the market was giving the back to this public space. This square beside the market had no life and any social activity at all. So one of the aims of the project was to think about how to bring life to this public space. Also, during the process of project, we talk a lot and work together with the neighbors and associations that would be the future users of the building. And we realized that there were 2 important issues. First, to leave the nave empty of programs, so it would be very flexible to hold different activities. And second, to place the main entrance on the public space, which is the picture that you're seeing on screen. So we got rid of the storage building, and in there we placed the extension and the main entrance of the new cultural center. Now, the square holds many open-air activities related to the center, and the old market has been reincorporated to the contemporary life of the neighborhood. So finally, we believe that the real success of the work depends on the people who will inhabit these spaces and the life itself. This is an image of the Apse Square. Before, the space behind the Cathedral of Tortosa used to be residual space to park cars, and now it has been recovered and people are using it in many different ways, as for example in this case that is holding a small format event. The Apse Square was one of the first interventions on the Tortosa old quarter, and it has helped to stop and reverse the degradation process that this quarter was suffering. Second is reversibility. Talking about reversibility means that in and out are independent one from each other. We understand inside and outside as verso and reverso. So one comes to be present in the other one. From inside, we start working on the program looking for an internal logic. In Barcelona, it is usual not to be specialized in any typology, so we are not. We have worked on cultural, educational, sanitary, residential. So we have been trying to find a way of working with internal logic of each building, no matter what the program or what the use is. So we look for logics, structures, and internal functional relations which could be generalized. Then plans are structured mainly by simple schemes of axes and grids. As you can see in these examples, the Museum of Energy on the left, Health Center of Aldea, Cultural Center of Ferrerías, the Library of Caldas, and then the Law Course of Balaguer. These regular structures that organize the inside program coexist with complex sites and surroundings. Then, a thick space of transition helps to deal between in and out, type and site. These diagrams are from the case of the Law Court of Balaguer that is now under construction. The building is placed in a very complex old quarter with very narrow streets, just 2 meters wide. So here, the regular structure was shaped by the irregularity of the alignments. This way, there is an in-between space that let us deal with questions of intimacy, natural lighting, and circulations. In the case of Ferrerías, the interior of the old nave is complementary to the new extension. During the day, the outside is present on the inside, and during the night, the inside is present at the outside. We use the new extension to generate a space of transition that relates the old market with the public space beside. From outside, on the daylight, the facade is heavy and mute, and when the night comes, it becomes lighter and permeable. From inside, it is just the opposite, opaque, heavy, and hermetic at night, but then during the day is lighter, and you can see and understand the original windows of the old market. The Museum of Energy is located beside the nuclear power station next to the Ebre River. From the very beginning, the client told us that the most important for him was the chance to offer to the visitor a direct view to the power plant. And the viewpoint should be discovered at the end of the exhibition promenade. So we had to do this exercise of looking for the best site to place the museum. In this sequence of pictures, you can see Josep, my partner, looking for the site. The power plant of Ascó has this amazing industrial scale, where one feels very small and quite isolated. Then here there was an opportunity to think about how to intertwine and relate such different scales. So the aim of the project was about dealing with this question of scale, between the scale of the large industrial landscape and you, the small visitor. The museum mediates these two scales, and so it is clearly divided into sides, the one that receives the visitor and the one that frames the views. Between receiving and framing, the content is shown. On plan, we started from a square 42 per 42, and we set the regular grid that modulates and organizes the program and interior spaces. The square is clearly divided in two parts. Reception and exhibition are divided by the services in the middle fringe and circulations. The grid at first was regular and abstract, but once it is set and overlapped on the site, some accidents or distortions happen. Then the museum anchors to the site and establishes close relations to its forerunners. Here the space that receives the visitor, then inside you can visit the exhibition. And finally, the views are framed. Finally, the swimming pools of Jesus. Jesus is very close to the delta of the Ebre River. So here, the landscape is characterized by olive trees, orange, mandarin, and lemon trees, but most of all, a very, very strong wind. The site is placed outside the town, on the road, so we were quite worried about how to change this quite isolated condition. So then we thought of generating a public space where we place the main entrance and the bar, and where now kids play football. The swimming pools are placed between a road and the landscape, so the steel facade comes to be a very clear boundary between this road and the swimming pool's space, protected from the traffic and the strong wind. The facade may seem very opaque from the distance, but when one gets closer, it becomes permeable. And also there are some points with direct views to the inside. The swimming pools were one of the 9 works of the exhibition Architectural Rowers that represented Catalonia on the Venice Biennale on its last edition. The commissars asked us to think and produce an object related to the work, but not literally. We thought of an stereoscope. At the beginning of the 19th century, when traveling was something very rare, lots of new gadgets and machineries appeared, like panoramas, kinetophones, and also stereoscopes. These machines tried to approach far realities to the public. A stereoscope is an optic illusion gadget that with just 2 pictures, placed very close, make this 3-dimensional effect. Just like the swimming pools, from the distance, it seems a strange object. You don't really know if it's watching you or is you that has to watch inside. Anyway, it catches your attention and wakes up your curiosity. Then you become a voyeur. And when you watch inside, you discover the life in the swimming pools, the people that inhabited the spaces and their stories. Just like in the first ephemeral installations, we had to produce it ourselves. And finally, at the end, the object was a stereoscope of 5 stereoscopes, a collection of 5 fragments of life or scenes of the swimming pools. And then the voyeur was the one that matched making up their own story. So just like Vivre sa vie, the audience is who gives sense to the story. Godard plays with the audience. He seduces you. He lets you listen, but you cannot see. He holds you constantly and makes you feel as a voyeur, and curiosity grows. But Godard does not explain anything. He shows facts as they are. He does not explain why, when, and where they happen. They just happen. So you don't have any option but filling up these gaps and making up the story. There is this moment when she, Nana, the protagonist, talk about her freedom, and she says, I am free, and so I am responsible of what I am. We are what we are, and we are responsible, and life is life, anything else. Godard understands freedom as something external and superficial. But there is also our interior, and the interior hides the soul. I really think that this is the main and only subject of the film, what this collection of images and dialogues talk about, what Vivre sa vie talks about. The third issue and last subject is permeable materiality. In Barcelona, there are 2 economic realities that coexist, a long artisan tradition and the global companies that develop systems. So in order to be economically sustainable, we try to combine local and global industries. At the same time, we understand materiality as a fundamental tool for the direct expression of architecture. In this sense, each project is approached by giving emphasis to a specific material. An example of that is the health center located in La Aldea. Here, all the facades are solved by a standard folded aluminum system, just taking special care on the corners and windows details. We explore the possibilities of each material by patterns, textures, and the potential of generating atmospheres emphasizing natural light. We use materials to get permeable textures, live materiality, sensitive and variable that changes and responds to its context conditions. From basic units, we establish assembly systems that configure a new unity as a texture. Industrialized elements are applied handcraftedly, so to conform a new element by systems. The Museum of Energy was solved with two main details: the regular perimeter made of steel and the curves of polycarbonate. Both are dry systems produced at the workshops and brought and just fixed on site. In the case of the Art Museum of Girona, materiality was used in terms of communication. So here, we use the logo of the museum to conform the facade. So this has been our journey so far. And now, since 2012, more or less, our way of getting commissions has changed quite much. I would say that now we have three different kinds of commissions. The first one are very, very small scale projects, both public and private. The second one, the second kind of commissions is Cifera. Cifera is a company that develops and builds pre-industrialized houses. We took part on setting the know-how of the company, and we have developed the constructive system. Here, we are more entrepreneurs than architects. In fact, the figure of the architect is quite blurred, and maybe we're closer to builders. Again, the usual process of project here is quite different as the usual. We work together with the manufacturers and artisans from the very beginning of the design process, and project and construction works are a continuous process. There's no cut. Without this interruption between drawing and building that it's so usual. And these are some images of the first prototype. We use sustainable and natural materials, and we also, in this sense of sustainability, we use passive systems, like patios or exterior galleries, to guarantee the comfort and interior spaces and the low energy waste. And the third kind of commissions are the urban scale projects from the public sector. We are asked to think about our cities at a long term, 20, 30 years time. So the town councils have a kind of, we call it, full de ruta, Jordi? Full de ruta, ¿cómo dirías? A guideline to develop, little by little in long-term time. And an example of this kind is the Four River Master Plan of Girona, which is about how to recover the relation between Girona and its four rivers. At the beginning of the time, Girona was set at a high level, far away from the floods of the river. But the city expanded and started to occupy the borders of the river. Many activities happened close to the water, just like the marketplace, for example. Also, the main entrances to the city and the paths were always along the river, with these lines of trees. Later on, the city grew, and it came the train and more expansions of the city, and infrastructures gained more and more the protagonism, while the rivers were more and more forgotten and left apart. Also, the drama and tragic stories of the floods. So time after time, the city ended up giving the back to its rivers. First feared and second forgotten. Today, we see these natural corridors as an opportunity to recover the relation between the city and its natural surrounding toward a permeable structure. We combine the global strategies that give continuity to the water systems with particular strategies to connect neighborhoods. And here are some examples that show the reconciliation of the city or the citizens with nature. The images below is the current state of the rivers. So, I would like to say that if today, after this huge crisis and these difficult times, I am here, it's because we, my team, do not believe in superheroes. In other words, you don't need to be a superhero to reach your dream. We really believe that anything is possible. And which is this anti-hero or I am not a hero attitude? First, you. Understanding that we all have some kind of talent. And I am saying talent, but I could say a dream or a good idea. But be aware that because this good idea or this talent is just 1% of what you need to achieve your dream. The rest, that 99%, consists of, among other things, confidence, think positive, and a lot of effort and perseverance. Second, team and adversity. Believe in teamwork. Today, on your own, you won't get very far. I mean, you need a good team around you. So share your knowledge with others and collaborate with other disciplines. Where you don't reach, others do. And also, do not be scared of adversity. Face it and learn from it. Without adversity, there is no thrift. Just think of any situation of adversity that you have faced. When you are facing it, you heighten your 5 senses. So we need to go away from the comfort area. For example, walking on the border of your discipline. I learned this while I was doing some research for my PhD thesis. Mies van der Rohe and Lily Reich received the commission of the German section for the international exhibition in Barcelona in 1929. And the German pavilion that you can see on the screen was just a very small part of the commission. Apart from the pavilion, there were 16,000 square meters of exhibitions. And these exhibitions were showing very different objects, from a nail to a plane, from a doll to a printer. So the main challenge of Mies and Reich was how to achieve a unitary outcome to give coherence, but also image, to the German section. And what I have seen is that with these exhibitions, Mies van der Rohe had the chance to explore and walk on the border of the discipline. He explored and experimented without fear, free of any presumption. And then, when he goes back and faces more conventional architectural questions, his point of view has already changed. Presumptions are gone. And then he suddenly makes a step forward and innovates in the field of architecture. And the third is the rest of the wall: act social and communicate. If what you do is your passion, and you do it thinking on the others, and you share it with others, you are multiplying the gratification or reward. And if you want to share it, you need to communicate. Vivre sa vie is a film with no heroes. It is a film about common people, like you and me. I would say that this is how we approach to architecture, with a close anti-hero attitude of proximity. We understand that the real success of architecture is that people appropriate and take ownership of the spaces. People and life is what gives sense to space and architecture. At the end, architecture and also the life itself is so much a question of attitude. Thank you.